This is, without a doubt, the worst decision we have made since that time we tried to invade the planet of sentient cacti, groaned Commander Zarvok as he stared at the surveillance feed. At least the cacti couldn't chase us. The blue-skinned commander drummed his 4 fingers against the control panel, his third eye twitching with stress as he watched their test subject dismantle yet another security drone. The human moved with shocking efficiency for a species that had only recently figured out how not to poison themselves with their own food preservatives. "But sir," protested Lieutenant Grix, her antenna quivering with excitement, "specimen acquisition was textbook perfect. The extraction team said this human was isolated in a remote wilderness area, living alone with minimal technological assistance. He's exactly what the High Council requested, a baseline human without societal contamination." Zarvok swiveled his chair around, all 3 eyes narrowing at his enthusiastic subordinate. "Grix, does that look like a baseline human to you?" On the monitor, the human designated subject 7142, but apparently self-named Jack Tanner had fashioned what appeared to be a spear from a piece of broken laboratory equipment. He was now using it to pry open an access panel that the ship's designers had specifically labeled "Absolutely do not open." "Well, technically, sir." "That was rhetorical, Grix," Zarvok sighed, pinching the bridge of his nasal cavity, where a headache was forming. "This is our 7th human acquisition. The previous 6 couldn't even figure out how to operate the food dispenser. This one has escaped containment 3 times, disabled our security systems twice, and appears to be— wait, what is he doing now?" The human had removed his outer garment, some kind of camouflage pattern jacket, and was using it to collect condensation from a cooling pipe. "I believe he's gathering water, sir," offered Science Officer Plex, who had been quietly observing from the corner. Plex had an annoying habit of stating the obvious while sounding impressed about it. Quite resourceful. "I can see that," snapped Zarvok. "The question is why he needs to gather water when his cell has a perfectly functional hydration station." "He refused to use it," Grix said, scanning her datapad. "You called it a toilet and said, and I quote, 'I may be desperate, but I'm not that desperate yet, you 3-eyed blue freaks.'" Zarvok suppressed a groan. "Charming. Sir," piped up Navigator Drell from the communications station, "the High Council is requesting our weekly update." "Should I inform them about the complications?" All 3 of Zarvok's eyes widened in alarm. "Absolutely not. Tell them the specimen acquisition was successful and initial observations are ongoing. No details." "But sir, protocol dictates." "Protocol also dictates that I shouldn't abandon you on the nearest uninhabitable moon, Drell, but I'm seriously reconsidering that stance." Zarvok turned back to the monitor. "Where did he go?" "I don't see him." The camera showed an empty corridor, the access panel hanging open, with no sign of subject 7142. "Switching to thermal imaging," Grix said, tapping commands into the console. The screen flickered, but still showed nothing. "That's odd. I'm not detecting his heat signature." "He's disabled the thermal sensors too?" Zarvok's voice rose an octave. "How is that possible?" "He's supposed to be a primitive wilderness dweller. According to his personal effects, he self-identifies as something called a survivalist," Plex interjected, reading from his own datapad. "Apparently it's a human who specializes in surviving hostile environments with minimal resources." "And you are just mentioning this now?" Zarvok bellowed, all 3 eyes bulging. "I put it in my report," Plex said defensively. "On page 47, under miscellaneous observations." "Nobody reads page 47. Zarvok slammed a fist on the console. "Lock down all decks. Activate security protocol Delta 9. And somebody please find this human before he—" The ship lurched suddenly, throwing everyone off balance as the lights flickered. A moment later, a calm, automated voice announced, "Warning, artificial gravity systems compromised in sectors 3 through 7. Backup systems engaged." "He's in the engineering deck," Zarvok whispered, horror dawning on his face. "How did he even find it?" He, asked one of the maintenance drones, Grix admitted, looking sheepish. Apparently he convinced it he was a new crew member. Those drones have bioscanners specifically to prevent that. Yes, but he was wearing Dr. Ulax's lab coat, with the authorization badge. Zarvok's skin tone shifted from blue to a pale lavender. Zaya. And how did he get Ulax's lab coat? Dr. Ulax is currently indisposed. Subject 7142 somehow rigged a trap using the specimen collection kit and a ration bar. Grix couldn't quite hide her admiration. Ulax is fine, just stuck to the ceiling of the medical bay. A new alarm began to sound, this one more urgent than the last. Sir. Drell called from his station. Someone's attempting to access the ship's navigation system. Override it. I can't. They are using Ulax's credentials. Zarvok closed his eyes, counted to 10 in his native language, then opened them again. The situation hadn't improved. Put me on ship-wide broadcast. Grix flipped a switch. You are live, sir. Attention, human subject 7142. This is Commander Zarvok. I understand there's been some misunderstanding regarding your presence aboard our vessel. I propose a civilized discussion to address your concerns and… Hey there, Commander Three Eyes, came a cheerful voice over the comm system. Subject 7142 Jack sounded frustratingly relaxed. Nice ship you have got here. Bit confusing with all the weird symbols, but your AI assistant was super helpful once I figured out how to change the language settings. You speak Zoraxian? Plex blurted out, then covered his mouth when Zarvok glared at him. Nah, but I speak enough JavaScript to recognize a language selection menu when I see one. Your ship's computer has amazing translation software. Anyway, I have got a proposition for you, Commander. Zarvok glanced at his officers, who all looked as bewildered as he felt. What sort of proposition? Simple. You turn this flying saucer around and take me back to Earth to the exact spot you grabbed me from, and I don't vent your engine coolant into space. Your choice. But fair warning, I'm looking at the manual override right now, and it seems pretty straightforward. Big red button. Universal language for, don't press unless you want exciting things to happen. That's not possible. Our mission parameters require. Yeah, I get it. You have got orders. Believe me, I have dealt with enough bureaucracy back on Earth to sympathize. But here's the thing, Commander. I don't think your bosses accounted for grabbing someone like me. And what exactly are you? Zarvok asked, genuinely curious despite the crisis. A low chuckle came through the speakers. Just a guy who spent 20 years preparing for the worst. Turned out alien abduction wasn't on my bingo card, but the skill set transfers surprisingly well. Now, about that course correction. Zarvok muted the comm and turned to his officers. Options? We could flood the engineering deck with sleep gas, suggested Grix. He's wearing Ulax's respirator, Plex pointed out. Security drones? He's already disabled 7 of them, Drell reminded him. What about just giving him what he wants? He ventured Plex. Return him to Earth, acquire a different specimen, one that doesn't know how to rewire our systems? Zarvok's third eye twitched violently. And tell the High Council we were outsmarted by a primitive monkey descendant. They'd demote me to waste management on the Zoraxian colony orbiting Uranus. He shuddered at the thought. No, we need to regain control. What assets do we still have? Well, Grix consulted her datapad. He hasn't accessed the teleportation systems yet. Perfect. We will teleport him back to the containment cell, but this time with extra security measures. Sir, Drell interrupted. I'm picking up unusual activity in Cargo Bay 3. What now? Zarvok growled, his patience wearing thinner than the atmosphere on Mars. It appears Subject 7142 has located our other specimens. A collective gasp went around the command center. The other specimens were various Earth fauna the team had collected for comparative studies, mostly harmless creatures like squirrels, raccoons. and a particularly bad-tempered goose that had pecked Ulax's third eye during processing. "Pull up the feed from Cargo Bay 3, Zarvok ordered, a sense of foreboding washing over him. The main screen flickered to life, showing Jack Tanner standing in the middle of the cargo bay, surrounded by open containment units. The Earth creatures were nowhere to be seen. "Where are the specimens?" Zarvok demanded. As if in answer, the ship's ventilation system made an ominous rattling sound, followed by what could only be described as an angry honk. "I believe," Plex said slowly, "that he has released them into the ventilation system." "But why would he?" Zarvok began, then stopped as realization dawned. "Oh no." "Commander?" Grix looked confused. "He's creating a diversion." Zarvok jumped to his feet, locked down the command center immediately. "He's coming here next." But it was too late. The doors to the command center slid open, revealing Jack Tanner standing in the doorway, wearing Dr. Ulax's lab coat over his own earth-toned clothing, a makeshift spear in one hand and what appeared to be a control pad in the other. Behind him, a raccoon perched on his shoulder like some exotic earth parrot. "Howdy, folks," Jack said with a grin that showed far too many teeth. "Hope you don't mind, but I brought a friend. This little guy's been real helpful showing me around your air ducts." He scratched the raccoon under its chin. "I named him Rocket." Seemed fitting. Zarvok and his crew stared in stunned silence at the human who had, in less than one planetary rotation, completely upended their carefully planned scientific mission. "Now then," Jack continued, stepping into the command center as if he owned it, "let's talk about that ride home. And maybe," he added, his grin widening, "you can tell me about those fancy star maps I saw in your navigation system. Particularly the ones marked classified military installations. Those looked mighty interesting." Zarvok's headache was getting worse by the minute. This was definitely, undoubtedly, the worst decision they'd ever made. The High Council was going to have his hide, all 3 layers of it. "Lieutenant Grix," he said with as much dignity as he could muster, "set a course for Earth." "But sir." "That's an order." Zarvok slumped back into his chair, defeated. "And update the specimen acquisition protocols. No more survivalists. Ever." Jack Tanner leaned against the doorframe, looking supremely satisfied. "Smart decision, Commander. Now, while we are heading back, maybe you could give me a tour. I have always wondered what makes these UFOs tick." "They are called interstellar research vessels," Zarvok corrected automatically. Potato, Jack shrugged. "So, about that tour." Zarvok's third eye twitched so hard it almost popped out of its socket. It was going to be a very long trip back to Earth, and somewhere in the ventilation system, an angry goose honked in agreement. "And this is our molecular synthesis chamber, where we create nutritional supplements calibrated for various species," droned Lieutenant Grix, who had been assigned tour guide duty as punishment for her role in the Survivalist incident, as it was now being called in hushed tones throughout the ship. "You mean it's a fancy food replicator," Jack Tanner said, peering at the machine with undisguised interest, "like on Star Trek." "I'm not familiar with this Star Trek military operation," Grix replied stiffly. Jack laughed, a sound that still made Grix's antenna twitch uncomfortably. "It's a TV show, science fiction. Though I guess for you guys, it's more like a comedy, huh?" Before Grix could respond, the raccoon still perched on Jack's shoulder like some sort of primitive security system chittered and pointed at a panel on the wall with its nimble paws. "What's that little fella saying?" Jack asked, scratching the creature behind its ears. "He's not saying anything. He's a non-sentient Earth mammal," Grix insisted, though privately she was beginning to have doubts. The raccoon had displayed an alarming aptitude for understanding ship systems during the past 12 hours. "Rocket here has gotten me out of 3 locked rooms so far," Jack pointed out. "I think he deserves some respect." As if understanding the conversation, the raccoon made a smug noise and nuzzled against Jack's neck. "The panel he's indicating controls waste disposal," Grix said reluctantly. "Nothing of interest." Jack raised an eyebrow. You know, for scientists, you folks are awfully quick to dismiss things as nothing of interest. That's how I found your weapons locker earlier. Rick's skin paled from blue to nearly white. You found the weapons locker? Relax, Lieutenant. If I wanted to turn this ship into my own personal battlecruiser, I would have done it by now. Jack winked, which did nothing to ease Grix's anxiety. I'm just trying to understand what I'm dealing with here. Trust goes both ways. Trust. Grix sputtered. You have systematically compromised our ship's security, released potentially dangerous Earth fauna into our ventilation system, and effectively taken our commander hostage. Hostage is a strong word. I prefer strongly encouraged cooperation. Jack shrugged. Besides, if you hadn't abducted me from my cabin, none of this would have happened. So really, who's the bad guy here? Grix had no good answer for that. According to the mission briefing, humans were supposed to be confused and compliant when removed from their natural environment. No one had prepared her for this particular human who seemed to treat the advanced starship like some kind of wilderness challenge course. Look, Jack continued in a surprisingly gentle tone, I get it. You have got a job to do. Scientific research, expanding knowledge, all that good stuff. But where I come from, we call this kidnapping, and it's generally frowned upon. Our research is vital to understanding developing species, Grix protested weakly. But then maybe try asking next time. You might be surprised how many humans would volunteer for an all-expenses-paid trip to the stars. Jack gestured around him. This is amazing technology. You could do a lot of good with it. Before Grix could respond, Commander Zarvok's voice crackled over the comm system. Lieutenant Grix, please bring the human to the command center immediately. We have a situation. Jack raised his eyebrows. A situation? Sounds ominous. Let's go see what Three Eyes is worried about now. The raccoon chattered in what sounded suspiciously like agreement. When they arrived at the command center, Zarvok was hovering over the navigation console, all three of his eyes wide with alarm. What's the problem, Commander? Jack asked, striding in as if he belonged there. Engine trouble? Alien pirates? Unexpected space squid? Worse, Zarvok said grimly. The High Council has learned of our predicament. Ah, Jack nodded sagely. The bosses found out you lost control of your ship to a primitive monkey descendant. That's gotta sting the old professional pride. They are sending an enforcement vessel, Zarvok continued, ignoring the jab. Standard protocol when a research mission goes off parameters. An enforcement vessel, Jack repeated slowly. That doesn't sound friendly. What exactly does enforcement entail in your neck of the galaxy? Zarvok and Grix exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Enforcement Division is authorized to take whatever measures necessary to protect Duxoraxian interests and prevent contamination of developing worlds, Plex explained from his science station, apparently missing the silent warning signals from his superior officers. Contamination, Jack echoed. You mean like if a human learned too much about alien technology and went back to Earth to tell everyone? Precisely, Plex nodded enthusiastically before Zarvok's glare finally registered. Oh. But I'm sure that won't be necessary in this case. Let me guess, Jack said, his earlier good humor evaporating. Their idea of preventing contamination involves making sure I never set foot on Earth again. Or breathing again, for that matter. The Enforcement Division does have a rather final approach to problem solving, Zarvok admitted reluctantly. Jack's expression hardened. And when were you planning to mention this? It wasn't relevant until now, Zarvok protested. The standard procedure is to return specimens to their point of origin with no memory of the encounter. Memory adjustment is a simple procedure that you were going to use on me without my consent, Jack finished. After taking me against my will in the first place. It's standard protocol for all specimens, Grix offered, as if that made it better. I'm not a specimen, Jack said quietly, a dangerous edge to his voice that made everyone in the command center take an instinctive step back. I'm a person, with rights. The raccoon on his shoulder growled, sensing its companion's mood shift. "How long until this enforcement ship arrives?" Jack asked, suddenly all business. Drell checked the readouts. "Approximately 6 Earth hours." "And how long until we reach Earth?" "At our current velocity, 10 Earth hours." Jack nodded, processing this information. "So we are in trouble. They will intercept us before we get to Earth." "Indeed," Zarvok confirmed. "And when they do, they will take control of this vessel, secure all personnel, and deal with the contamination issue." "Meaning me," Jack said flatly. "And possibly us as well for allowing the situation to deteriorate to this point," Zarvok added with surprising honesty. "Enforcement is not known for their understanding attitude toward failure." Jack paced the command center, the raccoon still perched on his shoulder like a furry advisor. "Okay, so we have got a common enemy now. That changes things." "Common enemy?" Grix looked confused. "The Enforcement Division is a respected branch of our government. A branch that's coming to deal with all of us?" Jack pointed out. "I'd call that an enemy, wouldn't you?" Zarvok's third eye narrowed in thought. "What are you suggesting, human?" "First, the name's Jack. Second, I'm suggesting we work together to solve this problem." He stopped pacing and faced the commander. "You have seen what I can do on my own. Imagine what we could accomplish as a team." "Cooperate? With a specimen?" Plex sounded scandalized. "With a survivalist," Jack corrected. "Someone who specializes in getting out of bad situations alive. And right now we are all in a very bad situation." A tense silence fell over the command center as the alien crew considered their options. Finally, Zarvok spoke. "What do you propose, Jack?" A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "First, we need to send a message to that enforcement ship." 4 hours later, Commander Vax of the Exoraxian enforcement vessel Relentless Justice was feeling increasingly uneasy about the upcoming interception. To run the message again, he ordered his communications officer. The view screen flickered to life, showing Commander Zarvok's face. The research vessel commander looked uncharacteristically nervous. "This is Commander Zarvok of the scientific exploration vessel Cosmic Curiosity with an urgent update. We have contained the situation and are proceeding back to Zoraxia with our specimens. However, we have detected an anomalous energy reading within the human subject that requires immediate quarantine protocols. Approach with extreme caution. Recommend maintaining distance of at least 10,000 spatial units to prevent potential contamination. Will transmit full data upon rendezvous. Zarvok out." "What do you make of it?" Vax asked his second in command. "It seems straightforward enough," she replied. "Though Zarvok does appear unusually agitated." "Wouldn't you be, if you had an anomalous energy reading in your specimen container?" Vax countered. "Still, something feels off. Their ship is maintaining course and speed. All systems appear normal from our scans." Vax drummed his fingers on the arm of his command chair. "Prepare a boarding team with full quarantine gear. I want to inspect this situation personally." "Yes, Commander." Back on the Cosmic Curiosity, Jack and the raccoon were putting the finishing touches on their plan in the engineering bay. "Are you certain this will work?" Grix asked, helping him connect a series of cables to what had once been the ship's backup communications array. "No," Jack said cheerfully, "but neither will sitting around waiting to be executed by space cops, so I'm going with the option that at least has a chance of success." "I still don't understand how you learned our systems so quickly," Grix marveled. "It took me 3 cycles of training to understand even basic ship operations." Jack shrugged. "When your hobby is figuring out how to survive the end of civilization, you get pretty good at adapting to unfamiliar technology." Plus, he added with a wink, "your ship's manual was very helpful." "We don't have a manual accessible to non-crew," Grix protested. "You do in your personal quarters. Very comprehensive." "Nice bookmarks, by the way." Grix's face flushed a deeper blue. "You went through my personal quarters?" "Rocket did," Jack said. nodding at the raccoon who was busy sorting wires with surprising dexterity. He's got a thing for shiny objects and tech manuals, apparently. The raccoon chittered what sounded suspiciously like laughter. They are within visual range, came Zarvok's voice over the comm. Are you ready? Where? Jack gave a thumbs up to the camera in the corner. As ready as we will ever be. Everyone clear on the plan? Yes, though I still think it's insane. Zarvok replied. The best plans usually are, Jack said. Positions, everyone. It's showtime. Commander Vax led his boarding team through the airlock of the research vessel, his environment suit sealing him off from any potential contamination. The ship seemed oddly quiet. Commander Zarvok? He called into his comm. We have boarded as requested. Zarvok's voice came through, sounding strained. Proceed to the main laboratory, Deck 3. The specimen is contained there. But be warned, the energy readings are increasingly unstable. Understood, Vax replied, motioning his team forward. Any other crew we should be aware of? All non-essential personnel have evacuated to the emergency pods as a precaution. Only myself and key science officers remain to monitor the situation. That was unusual, but not against protocol for potentially hazardous specimens. Vax led his team through the corridors, noting the eerie silence of the ship. When they reached the laboratory, the doors slid open automatically. Inside, Commander Zarvok stood next to what appeared to be a standard containment unit, modified with additional shielding. Commander Vax, Zarvok greeted him with a formal salute. Thank you for responding so quickly. What exactly are we dealing with? Vax asked, approaching the containment unit cautiously. Through the semi-transparent walls, he could make out a humanoid figure. We are not entirely sure, Zarvok admitted. The human appeared normal during initial capture, but began exhibiting strange energy signatures shortly after. We believe it may be related to something they call radiation on their planet. Vax peered closer at the containment unit. Open it. I want to see this specimen myself. Are you certain? The readings are quite unstable. I'm wearing a full containment suit. Open it. Zarvok hesitated, then nodded. As you wish. As the containment unit hissed open, Vax leaned forward and found himself staring not at a human, but at a small furry creature with a striped tail and what appeared to be a crude drawing of a face on its stomach. What is this? Vax demanded. Where is the human? The furry creature, the raccoon, chittered and pressed a device strapped to its chest. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Warning, announced the ship's computer in a voice that sounded suspiciously like Jack's. Quantum field destabilization in progress. Molecular dispersion in 30 seconds. What's happening? Vax shouted as his team began to panic. Zarvok looked at him with all three eyes wide. I tried to warn you about the energy readings. It appears the human has gone critical. Evacuate. Everyone back to our ship. Vax ordered, already running for the door only to find it sealed shut. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Zarvok said calmly. Quarantine protocols, you understand. From hidden speakers throughout the lab, Jack's voice echoed. Hey there, enforcement folks. Sorry about the deception, but I figured this was better than a violent confrontation. Don't worry, nobody's going to get hurt. Much. The lights flickered, and suddenly every screen in the laboratory displayed the same countdown, 10, 9, 8. Get down, Vax shouted to his team, throwing himself to the floor. 3, 2, 1. Instead of an explosion, there was a brief flash of light, and then nothing. The enforcement team slowly raised their heads. What just happened? Vax demanded. The laboratory door slid open, revealing Jack Tanner standing there with a grin, the raccoon back on his shoulder. Congratulations, he announced. You have just experienced a classic Earth prank we call getting punked. No molecular dispersion today, folks. But I did take the liberty of, shall we say, borrowing your ship while you were cowering on the floor. Impossible. Vax sputtered. Our ship has the highest security protocols in the fleet. Yeah, about that, Jack said, leaning casually against the doorframe. Turns out your highest security isn't raccoon-proof. Who knew? Zarvok stepped forward, looking more relaxed than Vax had ever seen him. Commander Vax, I'd like to introduce you to Earth's new unofficial ambassador to Zoraxia, Jack Tanner. Ambassador? Vax repeated incredulously. That's right, Jack nodded. See, the commander and I had a long chat about interspecies relations, and we decided that the whole abduct and study approach isn't really working out for either side. So we are trying something new, diplomacy. The High Council will never agree to this, Vax protested. Oh, I think they might, Jack said confidently. Especially after they review the very detailed report I have compiled about Zoraxian military capabilities, defensive systems, and… He paused for effect. Those classified star maps I mentioned earlier, all safely transmitted to my cabin back on Earth, with instructions to release them publicly if I don't return to cancel the upload. Vax stared at the human in shock, then turned to Zarvok. You allowed this? Allowed? No, Zarvok said with a sigh that conveyed a universe of resignation. Recognize the inevitable? Yes, this human has outmaneuvered us at every turn. I believe the saying on Earth is, if you can't beat them, join them. So here's what's going to happen, Jack continued pleasantly. You are going to return to Zoraxia and explain to your bosses that Earth is now officially under diplomatic protection. No more abductions, no more specimens. Any research needs to go through proper channels, meaning me. And in exchange? Vax asked weakly. In exchange, Earth remains ignorant of alien life for now. Your military secrets stay secret. And… Jack smiled. I might be persuaded to share some of our uniquely human survival skills. Seems like you folks could use the help, considering how easily one backwoods survivalist took over your ships. Rocket the raccoon chittered what could only be described as a laugh. Commander Vax looked from the smug human to his traitorous colleague Zarvok and realized he had been completely outplayed. Fine, he conceded. Ambassador it is. Jack clapped his hands together. Excellent. Now, who's hungry? I have programmed your food replicator to make something we call S-Mores. Trust me, they are out of this world. And that was how Jack Tanner, survivalist, became Earth's first interstellar diplomat with a raccoon as his deputy ambassador and an alien research vessel as his very own embassy among the stars. The High Council, needless to say, was not amused.